Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Seamus Breen. I'm part of the communications team here at the fund. I'll be your moderator / host for this evening. Welcome to phase 2 of our retirement awareness webinar series. This is the financial planning portion of the series. For those that joined phase 1, thanks for coming back. Anyone that was unable to attend last week, we're glad you could join tonight. And if you'd like to watch phase 1, it is available on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. It's at EAS Carpenters Funds is the YouTube channel. So why do we have these webinars, and why do we put on this series from the fund's perspective? It's a series all about making sure our members have the information, the clarity, and the confidence they need as they move closer towards retirement. You spent your careers building structures that last, schools, hospitals, homes, infrastructures for the communities that they rely on. And retirement's very similar. It's about making sure that what you've built for yourselves lasts just as long. The transition from earning a paycheck to living off your pension, annuity, any other savings or retirement accounts that you may have is one of the biggest financial shifts you'll ever make. And the goal tonight is to help make that shift smoother and more informed. So where do you start? First and foremost, you need a plan, and you're going to hear that a lot tonight. You're going to hear the word plan a lot. And no different than being on the job site. Imagine showing up and trying to build a building without a plan. It's kind of like you just showed up with your hammer, your nails, and said, hey guys, let's just see what we come up with. We'll just wing it. Next thing you know, the bathroom ends up in the attic, and the stairs lead to nowhere, and the walls are crooked, and that's what you end up with. That situation would be very difficult for even the most skilled tradesperson to try and fix and navigate. And maybe you had some of those jobs, or maybe you've worked for some of those employers in your past career that maybe the lack of leadership or lack of a plan didn't make it so easy to navigate and do your job to the best of your ability. So retirement is in the same category as that. When it comes to retirement, you'll be better prepared, and most likely you'll have more success if you have that plan. So that brings us to why we're here tonight. And we're continuing the conversation with 2 experienced financial advisors that work closely with individuals navigating this exact stage of life. And before I introduce them, I'd like to go over tonight's format. This webinar, it's just meant to be practical, open forum. It's a real world conversation, just a back and forth. It's not a sales pitch. The fund does not endorse these financial advisors. They are not asset managers or part of the pension fund or annuity funds. They're not compensated by the fund, nor do they pay us. They're just here for educational purposes. We've had some feedback from members that said they do a really good job, and you may recognize them from our fireside chat. They sat down with the Executive Fund Director, Pete Tanya. Hopefully you were able to watch that prior to tonight's webinar. If not, again, that's on YouTube as well. And we encourage you to listen to the information and answers they provide. Please make sure to meet with as many financial advisors though as possible. Again, this is educational purposes, but do your own vetting process and usually find the right fit and figure out what's going to work best for you. Retirement isn't just about stopping work. It's about starting the next chapter with confidence. So with that, let's get into it. Let me introduce my 2 guest advisors tonight. To my immediate right, this is Tom Crossett. He's the director at Pine Valley Investments. And to his right is Paul Furlong, the executive vice president for Gormley Furlong Wealth Advisory Group of Janney Montgomery Scott. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. Appreciate it as always. Good to see you. Before we get into the audience questions, I'll break the ice. I'll get started with some warm-up questions, all right? And we'll figure out where we go from there. Again, feel free to enter your comments and questions into the chat, and we'll answer them if we can get to them. If they're more of a personal nature, we maybe have somebody will reach out to you from the fund office to discuss in detail with you. But let's get started. So if I'm a member, I'm reaching out to you guys. I'm 5 years out from retirement, let's say. What are the top 3 things that they should be focusing on right now leading up to that retirement? And I'll start with Tom.
Thanks, Seamus. The interesting question. I mean, we would argue there's more than 3. But those top three is if you're 5 years out, you're 5 years too late. You need to start this early and often. Secondly, you heard the word plan. You need to have a plan of what you're trying to accomplish, what those future goals are. And thirdly, you need to save money. So you need to save money both via your annuity, but also maybe your outside monies as well. Because all of that is going to help you succeed, given that we know life expectancy has moved us forward into our 80s, close to our 90s.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And Paul, do you have anything to add to that? Top three
Yeah,
things
those are
that maybe-
great. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
I really think it's paramount. You need to plan. You need to start planning yesterday. We've been dealing with carpenters since 2001, and I can tell you that the biggest thing you need to focus on, I think, is how much money you think you're spending. And versus thinking it, there should be no maybes in planning. You really want to get a full concrete handle on what types of expenditures you have. And those expenditures are going to grow over time with inflation. Some change, some may drop off, maybe educational expenses, et cetera. But how much money you spend today, and then we need to make inflation assumptions. Most carpenters today, they have a pension that's fantastic, but fast forward 20 years from now, that same dollar amount will shrink in purchasing power. So getting a handle on how you're spending money, get a financial advisor involved. That's really going to help you forecast these things in reality so we can prepare for them. And also, we really need to get a handle. I think the second most important thing is, okay, all these expenses are upon us. How are we going to pay for them? And that would be what income projections you have. I mean, the beautiful thing about the carpenters is you have a defined benefit, which is very rare today. I mean, you have a pension with Social Security. Are you going to be working 40 hours a month? Are you going to do other side jobs? Does your spouse work? So the big two things I could add to what Tom said is just find out how much you're spending, find out how much you're going to make. And then the difference would be with your piles of money that you have through the profit share, at what rate does that need to grow at? Those are the big three. And that's all through financial planning.
Great. And I think those are both great answers. And again, there's even just in this short, 2-minute answers, there's a lot of information just in that. And that brings me to my next question. So ready to retire, we talk about making a plan. This is something you have to really think out and get a strategy for. It's not just hitting that age requirement, right? We did phase one. We talked about age 55 and 30 years of service. We'll use that as an example. It's not just about hitting that number in those years. There's probably a little bit more to it, correct?
There's no doubt. Yeah, I think the one thing you should try to avoid is rules of thumb. That's an old thing. Take your age minus 100. That's how much you have in stocks or bonds. Not good. I wouldn't take advice from your buddies at the water cooler. You have to be careful on family get-togethers. You have the uncle who knows everything, because everyone is different. You could have 3 kids, no kids, second marriage, single, but these play a huge role in determining the outcome and success of your plan. And you have to really organize all of that to make sure you know what's going on in your life. And you really don't want to do this blindly. You really, really don't.
And I'm going to follow up with Tom and say, if a member doesn't want to plan, or they just say, hey, I've got my pension, I'm good, I have my annuity money, I'm good, I don't need to worry about it, I'll just I'll meet the hurdles when I get to them, right? I'm good with that.
Sure.
What would you immediately ask them if that's their response? Is that, no, I'm good, I don't need any advice, I'm okay?
You'd have to challenge that reasoning, I believe, just because it's difficult. Paul mentioned his previous answer about inflation. It's something that we can't control, continues to grow, and how that's going to eat away at your purchasing power. You're almost destined to fail if you take that attitude, because this is a complicated world we live in that's getting more expensive and more far-reaching for people. So you are best served to at least somehow partner with an advisor or someone of that ilk, if you will, to help you through these nuances of what you're going to face very soon.
Yeah, great advice. And I guess the final piece of this kind of opening discussion is, be honest, in your line of work, how many people think they're ready to retire, but they're not quite there yet? They think they've hit the number in the years and they're ready to retire.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think there's more trepidation than you think. I see it so many times, especially with the spouse who maybe isn't the breadwinner, and they just, this is it. I mean, when you cross that threshold, when you're signing where the line is dotted for I'm choosing this pension option, or I want my assets to go here, that's permanent. There is no go back. You can't rewind the clock. That's a huge decision, and I think a lot of people just want to make sure they're going to be okay, and that's really what prudent planning will do. It maps it out. I've had plenty of situations where they're not okay or they won't be okay, and as a good advisor and a fiduciary, you really need to tell them to shoot straight. Some people say, I've had 52.5-year-olds. It used to be you could retire that early, and there was a lot of pressure with inflation over time that this flat pension that you fast forward out doesn't meet the standards. So a few more years of work, or a few more years of part-time work, or spend less, things like that. So that's why planning this out is essential. But I'd say that there's more trepidation and nervousness than you think. What the beauty of planning is, once you're armed with the facts, you're empowered.
Yes.
And then you can act accordingly. But most carpenters are okay anyway. But just to make sure they're okay, that's really, I think, important.
Yeah.
I would just add that, emotionally, I think we all want to retire, right? But it's our emotions driving that decision. If you think about your life and if decisions that you made where emotions were involved, I would argue a lot of them were probably bad decisions. And so as Paul said, having that fact, having that plan is going to give you those numbers that are saying that I can or I can't.
Yeah.
At least not yet, right?
Yeah. And I think when you think of retirement, if you're an optimistic person, you're thinking everything's going to go great. I already have, there's not going to be one thing that goes wrong. And then if you're a pessimistic person, then you might doubly need a financial advisor, somebody to really help you along and hold your hand and tell you, okay, everything's fine, it's okay. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. That just coming back to the importance of making sure that you're really planning out and you have somebody there if you need to lean on to help you, guide you through these the navigation and the hurdles that pop up during pre-retirement and post-retirement. So we got that started. Some questions are starting to come in, which is good. I love seeing it from the audience. So we'll go to the audience. The first question. We hear a lot about being a fiduciary. So we hear that word a lot. You're starting to see it on TV. You're hearing it on radio ads. I know I hear it on the ride home when I'm listening to sports talk radio. Fiduciary. You hear a lot of that word a lot. Can you explain for the audience and for the participants, what's that mean? What does fiduciary mean? And I'll start with Paul. Go ahead.
Okay. In the most simplistic way to say it, a fiduciary should simply act in your best interest. That may sound cliche, it may sound silly, but it's true. And I can tell you, the industry, there's Bernie Madoff certainly wasn't acting in anyone's best interest, right? We have horror stories. But a fiduciary is held to a very high standard. And what a fiduciary is trying to do is get on your side of the table, act in your best interest, but also, most importantly, is remove conflicts of interest. And all that means is that when you do a financial plan, and that's a lot of the heavy lifting, but then implementing the plan through investing, that's what we do as advisors. We run portfolios. We have portfolio managers that do this for us. But who we choose, there should be no incentive, extra payment. You don't want somebody from Vanguard taking you out to dinner, buying you steak dinners, and therefore now committed to giving clients their assets. So you really want to make sure that every decision, there's not something behind the scenes that's motivating us as advisors to do something else. Johnny's a fiduciary, I'm a fiduciary, so we're co-fiduciaries, but it's very important that you do that, and you want to make sure that you're testing that to make sure that they're not doing something that there's an extra incentive.
I would just say it's not just a guideline, it's a legal obligation.
Yeah.
That we have to
Good point.
perform in that capacity.
Yeah. So fiduciary, meaning you guys have to make sure that the client best interests are in heart as opposed to your own self-interest as a firm. And not everybody follows that rule. So it's a great question to ask when you're vetting financial advisors or financial planners, find out if they're a fiduciary. So we'll follow that up. I'm going to go to Tom. That was a great question. This is a good one because it's pretty simple and straight to the point, which is, you're a financial advisor, not everything's offered at no cost. So there is a fee involved. So how do financial advisors usually get paid, or how are their fees structured? And I'll start with Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
In our industry, there's a lot of ways that financial advisors get paid, and we all get paid. Paul mentioned those maybe not as fiduciary as we are, but here's what you should look for. You should look for an advisor that is transparent and has an asset-based fee. We all watch TV, and you probably see on TV 100 times a day a commercial from a national renowned advisor that talks about fees. And they're correct, 1,000%, that fee-based and the adage of when you do better, we do better. And that's the sole encompassing truth, I think, of our business.
Yeah, we also are big proponents, if Tom works this way as well. When you're getting a financial, when you're seeking a financial advisor, you shouldn't just go to one, just like anything in the medical profession, a second opinion, right? We recommend doing a financial plan at no cost, meaning there's no obligation. So this will be a complimentary consultation, if you will. And, normally our protocol would be the phone rings, I'm Joe Smith, you work with, John Jones. I hear you do a good job for him. I'd like you to do a plan for me. I'm a carpenter. I'm set to retire in the next 6 months or 2 years. We will take all the information from you and build out a plan at no cost. There's no obligation either. So there's no pressure. There's not a timeshare sales pitch. We want to make sure we're doing everything. We're putting everything forward at no cost. The way then we get compensated is if you decide you want to be an investor. And like Tom has said, we prefer what's called a fee-based platform, meaning that you're not getting commissions to buy and sell investments. You're getting a percentage. We try to keep everything under 1% for our clients. So everything we do, there's no upfront cost, but if you decide, hey, I want to roll my profit share to you, or I have outside Roth IRAs, or whatever you have, my spouse has a teacher's a 403B. If you roll those assets in, we charge a fee to run those assets. There's no other fee involved, meaning that we're not charging to buy and sell. We're just simply, we do better when you do better, as Tom had said earlier.
Great.
And then let me just add just on to that is that just to give you the landscape of our business, that the typical advisory fee for, $500,000 portfolio, we'll say is, 1%, but it could rise up to as high as 1.5%. You just need to be aware of what the averages are and what people are quoting you at.
Great. And it's great insight into, what the cost is going to be. If you do go ahead and look for a financial planner, and that's going to be one of the next questions, but it's also good to know that you guys offer that complimentary plan. So at least when you're out vetting financial advisors, if they offer a complimentary plan, you can get a good insight and a blueprint and a full outline of what's coming in, what's going out, what you're looking for, what are your plans, what are you looking to do in retirement. So it's good to know that that's offered at no cost, and you can get a pretty clear idea and a better understanding of what you're looking like heading into retirement and post-retirement.
Yes, want to add something else too. What's nice to it that when you're a fee-based platform, you can call as many times as you want. We're not a lawyer. We're not hitting you for 15-minute time slots to bill you. I mean, planning is endless work. In every tax season, should we be doing Roth IRAs, backdoor Roth IRAs? Should we be maxing out a 401k? These are all decisions. We're looking at maybe perhaps buying a house up in the Poconos or down at the beach. Should I buy or lease a car? These are all things that we as a financial advisors want to help you with, because the wealthier you are, the wealthier you become, of course, the better. We all benefit from that. So we have a direct incentive to try to keep you as wealthy as possible and have that wealth accrue over time. And you want to be able to call, or let's say you're nervous because the market's going through a correction. Give us a call. We'll talk about it. So those are things that we want to avail ourselves to you, that you're not paying for that service.
I would say, as a client, you should not be afraid to ask that person how they get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great insight. You never be afraid to ask questions, because, like I said, they're there to help you, and they're going to answer, hopefully, honestly. Anybody you're looking for. I know these two are very honest. So that brings us actually to a good question we have here. I'll bring it up from Mike is asking, how do we find a financial planner or advisor? What do you look for? If somebody was out researching financial planners, advisors, what are some things they would look for when searching? I'll start with Paul. Go ahead.
Okay. I think referral, if you know someone, that's usually most of our business is now referral generated, because people have they've already kind of tested this person. A lot of times, this industry has become commoditized, meaning that because of technology, we have access to the entire investment universe. I can buy what Tom can buy, vice versa. So we're not really sometimes offering something that can't be bought elsewhere. It could be a personality fit. And that's comes down to it a lot. So, is this person connecting with me? So you're going to try on different hats. You can Google an advisor near me. You could do that, call family and friends. Who do you work with? It's a little bit of a pain, but once you do the first plan, usually the next planner is going to ask the same questions. And then it really comes down to where's the best fit? What's this person's track record? Can they give me references? I would say that would be a good way to vet people out. But the internet is a beautiful place to start.
It is, but I'll caution you on one thing. As you go into that search engine and you put in finding a local investment advisor, many, many times that information is sold
That's a good point.
to third parties, who then you're going to get a call from like 15 advisors in about 15 minutes. So you really got to be careful. But it goes back to what Paul said. I think if you know someone, referrals are a terrific way to get some peace of mind as to effectiveness. And what Seamus said earlier in your introduction, don't be afraid to talk to multiple people and find out, what they're all about.
Yeah. And that actually will bring me, I'm going to stick with you, Tom, here, because the next question kind of sticks in the same area. It's from Donna. I'm going to bring the question up here. It's so once you find a financial advisor, how long would you need a financial advisor for? Is it a lifetime? Do you have a contract that you put with somebody? How much time do you have with a financial advisor?
That's a really good question. We are a contractually obligated firm. I know Paul is as well. Our contract with our clients is open-ended. So we begin on a date, but there's no ending date. And it allows, and most advisors this way, allows you to leave and exit anytime you might want. I would argue that if you have an advisor and you like that advisor, that personality match that Paul spoke of, you want to keep them for as long as you can keep them. I'm not sure why you would get rid of them. I think we add value through every stage of life, and life changes, circumstances change. And that plan is not just one and done. It's an ongoing, living, breathing document that gets changed based upon those updates.
Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question. The next one we have here, a lot of good questions coming in. This is from Brendan. Can I roll my pension into an IRA and invest it into investment properties? And what would be the tax implications look like? So I don't know if we want to get too deep into that, but it was actually something we could bring up. I know just speaking to the membership, a lot of guys, especially being in this trade and in this industry, want to go invest in properties. They want to go invest in rental properties. I'm sure you guys have had experience.
It's pretty common. Yeah. So the short answer is yes. With real estate and IRA, so you can. The protocol is you retire, you take your money out of the profit share or the legacy annuities, you roll them into a self-directed IRA, and then with that, an IRA is just a tax shelter. Then there are companies that will help provide real estate. Real estate can get real sticky. If you need to do an improvement, for example, you can only use the money that's within there, because if you're trying to add money for, say, all of a sudden an unexpected issue comes up and you need $40,000 extra dollars, you can't put the money in there because that would be deemed as a contribution. It's tough. Sometimes it's tough to unwind as well. It can be done. You can certainly. We have some references of accounts that do it. It's not my favorite thing to do, but you are very good at finding properties at discounted values, and you're very good at fixing them up and making it happen. So we really like to try to help facilitate that, but it's very specific. You guys have to be careful. There are some pitfalls that you can fall into.
Very complicated.
Yeah.
And the bureaucracy of it can be mind-numbing a bit, if you ask me.
And again, it's just another example of at least vetting, reaching out and vetting different planners, advisors, and get a plan in place for what you're looking to do with your money once you're in retirement.
That's a specialty, though. That's a specialty that you really have to find that.
It's a great question.
It's a great question, and it's great advice. I did see something came up in regards to the options. So I saw a question up here in regards to someone wants to go back over the 50, 75, 100% joint survivor options. We won't get into all that. We did talk about it in phase one. But it is a good question for our panel here, because what should someone consider when choosing a pension payout option? So that 50, 75, 100% joint survivor, or that 60 or 120 month payment guarantee, they have to make that decision when they come in to retire right then and there. So if you're not quite sure and you've never seen these terms, you never heard these terms, then you come in to sign your paperwork and they say, which one do you want to pick? That's a big decision, because you can't change it. Once you make the choice, you cannot go back and change that. So how would you guys advise or help members with that portion of the retirement process?
This encapsulates tonight's discussion. You have to plan, and do it early. Do it at least 6 months out before you want to retire, because we do what's called a survivor analysis. Again, go back to how much do you think you're going to spend? How are we going to cover that spending? What the investments need to do? Well, okay, now what if you're not here, Carpenter? How will your spouse or significant other survive? And that's called a survivor analysis. In that, we can back into these numbers to try to identify what is the best choice for you. If you're super healthy, sometimes we have a lot of carpenters that opt for, they take the single life option, which is the greatest payout. The spouse looks at them and go, what the heck are you doing? And they say, wait a minute, I'm buying life insurance as a way to fund that. In case I'm not here, you will then be given a lump sum to make up for that loss of income. It's not hard to do. You can't do it overnight. We had situations where people, they do everything, they go in and say, okay, I'm going to do the single life, but I'm going next week. The problem is you can't get underwritten for insurance if that's the option you want to go. It usually takes a couple of months to get underwritten effectively. And you can do these prepay things, et cetera, but just plan in advance, and then we can give you a very good answer on what's optimal.
Yeah. And somebody did ask in phase one if they could bring a financial advisor to their retirement appointment, and the answer from our retirement specialist from phase one was yeah, you can bring, if you have somebody that's your financial planner, your financial guru, bring them with you to your appointment, and they can help with that process of going in and out, weaving in and out of those different criteria and things that come up when you're going to retire and you have to sign all this paperwork.
Agreed. And I can't say I love the question, because it just harkens back to a personal experience I have, but it goes back to what Paul said. It's about being prepared and planning, if you will. Again, is that, my father, when he was 57 years old, he decided to retire, and middle class, uneducated, and really didn't know a lot. And he went in, had to sign the form, and took the biggest payout. He bet on himself, as we say. And unfortunately, he died 6-7 years later, leaving my mom with this crater of financial responsibility that she had no way of handling. So you really have to think about it and what you're trying to accomplish, how much you want to protect your family post you, if you will. And I think that life insurance option is something that should be explored, because it makes some sense in some situations.
So, yeah. My dad is the opposite, actually, situation. He retired at 47 and a half from the New Jersey State Police. And the loving husband that he was did the 100% survivor, meaning that he took the biggest haircut. So when he passed, the day he passed, my mom would get the same amount he got. At 83 years old, he's looking at me going, son, I don't think I made the best decision, because I've been technically paying for this survivor option all these years, and I'm still here. Wow, if I could have planned it out differently, perhaps I would have. I wasn't educated about this. He did pass, and my mom, is in a home now. But so you really have to tread this very carefully, very lightly. Don't make a rash decision, because the opposites can really be bad.
Yeah. Great advice. I'm actually going to go, it's kind of a 2-in-1 back to the fee question. So usually is it annual or one time, and is it paid the 1% of $500,000 yearly? So I guess the question's basically the same question is that an annual fee that they would see on a statement or something, or does that go quarterly over the course of a year broken down?
We quote our fees on an annual basis.
Okay.
And then typically most firms, our firm, I'm not sure, Paul, but probably saying we charge that on a quarterly basis. So prorate at 1 quarter, 4 times a year to equal that annual percentage.
We work the same way,
Okay.
right? So it is an annual. So 100,000, say at 1%, if that was the math, that'd be 5,000 per year every year. And as it grows to 1 million, we start discounting it. You
Correct.
do too.
Yes.
We start to lower the fee as the assets grow. But that comes out on a quarterly basis, just like you. And it's really worth it. You want to find it, but usually we have access to tools that will hopefully accelerate the returns. There's an old expression, I think Warren Buffett said, cost is the absence of value. So if you're really harping in on the fees, then you might need to change advisors if you think they're not worth it. We tend to think we're worth it, of course, but we are, because we can really guide you through the ups and downs, and also get you in investments that will usually exceed indexes with less volatility.
But that's a great question, and it
Great
just goes back to ask that question. When you're interviewing someone, ask that question.
Absolutely. So we're going to get another one from the audience. Again, a bunch of them coming in. This is from Rob. He would ask, would you recommend to convert your investments to more conservative investments in retirement? So I guess it's more of I guess that's kind of what are you looking to do? Be more, that would be their choice, right? A little bit more conservative or risky or moderate. That's something you would go over with.
It would, and I would argue that, again, it needs to be customized. There should be some collaboration between what your goals are and what your expectations are. Coming out of the annuity that's managed outside of us by other advisors, I would argue that's probably more conservatively allocated, just due to the size and the scope and the fiduciary nature of that fund, where when you do roll that money over, you might want to take a more growthier approach, for lack of better words, add a little bit more risk to it, all depending on that time. And time is the most valuable component that we can talk about.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So what we in the heart of a financial plan is really trying to determine what is the rate of return you need on your assets, and everyone's different. That plan should be updated every year, minimally every other year, if your lifestyle doesn't change too much. But what's going to come out of that is the rate of return that you need. And we usually run plans out to age 100. God forbid you live that long, or God willing. But when we do that, you have a rate of return that we want to try to hurdle. That rate of return then is going to dictate how your money should be run. So that's going back to what I said, these rules of thumb. Some people come to us and say, I'm scared to death of the market. I don't know what's going on in the world. Make me conservative. And we run a plan and they need 6%. Well, very conservative investments maybe generate 3.5 nowadays. That's not enough. So we have to have a conversation about, well, we don't put all your money in the market, but maybe we diversify it in enough so there will be some growth on the part of that. So that would be a very specific question. But what we want to do when you run money, you want to run money on a risk first. So once the return is determined, then we say, well, what's the least risky way to get that rate of return? That may look different for everyone. You could be a 62-year-old retiree with 4 young children. You have college or a big cost ahead of you. You might need your money to grow at 9%. That is certainly different than someone who needs their money to grow 3 or 4. So that would really determine how conservative or aggressive you should be. But we can help guide you with that.
Right. And I would just caution you, as you define what your rate of return should be, it should be unique to you. Unique to you. And don't really worry about what the market's doing, the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, because more than likely, through asset allocation, diversification, you're not going to own all the market. You're not going to have all those risk assets. But your rate of return that's personal to you, that should be the number you judge your performance on.
Good question.
Yeah, great question. Hopefully that answer. It's again, it's everybody's different, and the situation applies differently for everybody. So Ken has a question here. A few months out from retirement, at what point should I commit to an advisor? So if he's a few months out, is there any specific time, or is it just when you feel good about who you maybe have landed on as you've done your research? Is there a specific time frame to commit to an advisor?
Well, I would say if you find that advisor to be valuable to you, and you have that personalization that Paul mentioned, I can't see why you would not engage that firm, that person, because the clock doesn't start ticking in terms of fees and expenses until those assets hit the book and you begin managing those assets. So that 2-month period, 3 months, whatever, is almost like a honeymoon stage. Give you a chance to know each other, find out more about one another to be more effective once the money's hit and the plan is then deployed.
Great answer. And then I'll go to you next here, Paul. Donna has a question. She says, is there any penalty if emergencies arise to use our money? Are there rules with the financial institution holding the money?
Okay. So that's a great question. If we're going to make the assumption that this is just the carpenter, that's the lion's share of your wealth. So we have the profit share, the legacy note. Now they're in an IRA account. Now I need the money. It's an emergency. So the IRS has certain rules. The first one would be age-based, right? So if you're younger than 59 and a half and you want to access funds, there's normally, it's always taxed as ordinary income, but then there's a 10% withdrawal penalty. You can work that around it, but it has to be a hardship, and hardships they're really, really tight. They have to be like a house fire, like a severe emergency. Those are things that you can grab, but you have to file with the IRS, and they have to agree whether that was truly a hardship or not. Now, if you're 55 or older and you haven't yet rolled the money over, we can squeeze money out. So there's a rule in the state of Pennsylvania that the official age of retirement is 55. So these are nuanced questions. So we'd have to talk to you about what your situation is, how old you are. And then when you pull the money out, there are workarounds. We've had situations too. There's a 60-day rule where you can pull money out of an IRA, and as long as you put it back within 60 days, the IRS looks at that as if that would never happen, but not 61 days. It is 60 days. Even if you go one day over, it blows up. So that's where you really want to sit down with an advisor. It's hard to kind of give this answer, over this type of format, but we could call either one of us, give us your situation, your ages, the assets, what is the need, et cetera. So we could help you with that.
All right. Appreciate the response. Appreciate the question, Donna. Here's one. We have, what's the right mindset? And I'll go to Paul for this. What's the right mindset during market volatility for someone approaching retirement? Let's say they've gone with a financial advisor, they have their money invested, they have their accounts. It's market volatility, it's up and down. What's the right approach for someone getting closer to retirement and in post-retirement, where it's a little bit tighter? What would be the approach?
Repeat that
in terms of market volatility.
Okay, so
what would be the advice for what's the right mindset basically to have as a member going into pre-retirement, post-retirement, and dealing with market volatility?
Yeah. I would say, data is your best friend, and if you really are, retirement isn't a one-day thing. It's for the rest of your life. Think in 7-year cycles. Is usually we try to tell people that in any given 7-year cycle, a lot of things tend to happen, ups and downs, but the statistical probability of hitting your target return is extremely high if you allow 7 years. So right now we're in a very heightened, there's a heightened volatility. The market's up 1,000 points, it's down 1,000 points, it hits 50,000, drops to 49,000. It's all over the place. But with good advisors, normally you wouldn't have to sit there and go through the entire machinations, the ups and downs of the stock market on its own. As Tom had said, we're going to diversify a lot of that away, a lot of that volatility away from you. So again, it's back to the plan. We iron out what rate of return we need to target, and then we discuss the expected volatility. That's all about the data. Everything's a bell curve. And we stay within these what are called standard deviations of return. So we can really spell out for you, even when times are volatile or they're calm. And I would almost argue they're almost never calm. I think I wake up every morning with something to worry about and something to get excited about. That's just how life is. But if you build the right asset allocation model, the mixture of stocks and bonds, et cetera, you are going to be prepared for any and all volatility that comes your way.
What Paul said was so true. Retirement isn't a one-day event, right? It's the rest of your life. And I'd like to tell people who are at that stage, God bless you, embrace the long term. And when you embrace the long term, that 7-year cycle that Paul's talking about, everything kind of evens itself out. The averages repeat themselves. And we feel that there's probably not as much a threat that you might see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's great advice, because you could drive yourself nuts if you're just sitting there watching every day. You're watching the markets and you're watching the ups and downs. You would make yourself crazy. You have to then go back to the plan. If you trust in the plan and you trust in your advisor that the plan that's laid out is working, then you should be okay. right? You shouldn't be too
Yeah.
concerned. I mean, obviously, any type of volatility, you should have your ear to the ground and see what's going on. But that's what you guys are there for.
It's a fascinating stat. Since 1900 to 2025, in that 125-year cycle, there's roughly 31,000 trading days. The average turn of the stock market's almost 11%. It's pretty remarkable. 51% of the days are up.
Wow.
That's it. So every other day is down. So we can't get too caught up in this sort of called recency bias, they call it, where everything is happening now. This must be the way things are. Let things play out as they are. And we do discuss that with clients. Volatility is just a risk premium you have to pay and tolerate if you want to accrue wealth. If you don't want any wealth, then you go into the passbook savings accounts or money markets. You will have no volatility, but there will be no return. And that may suit you, but you may end up older and poor. So that's what we want to help you with.
Yeah. And so what I'll do is we'll go into the next question. I'll go to Tom. So Glenn has a question now. This is kind of a two-parter. Do you recommend rolling over the annuity to an IRA? So I'm assuming he's saying once he's retired, you have access to that money. You recommend rolling it over to an IRA. And then also the second part is, what's the difference between the money purchase and the profit sharing? I could answer that one real quick. Is the money purchase is for former Northeast carpenters, I believe it was like pre-2009 contributions. There's no more contributions going into that one. The profit sharing is your current annuity plan, profit sharing plan. That's the current one, but they both have the same distribution rules, I believe. So back to the first part, which is rolling over the annuity to the IRA. Is that something that you would recommend?
Glenn, good question. I would recommend it, and I'll tell you why. And not just on a personal reason or a selfish reason, is that your money right now in that annuity is being managed like a million other carpenters' monies. This gives you the opportunity to roll that out and to build a portfolio that's essentially targeted to what your needs are, what your risk requirements are, et cetera. So I'd rather have control than have someone else in control with a million other people.
Yeah, great answer and good question, Glenn. Hopefully that answered your question. Again, if you have specific questions in regards to the plan of benefits, we'll have somebody reach out to you in the next couple of days. Here's one from James, and we'll go to Paul on this one. At what age can you start getting a monthly payment from your annuity? Now, this might tie back into so there's the distribution rules for the plan that, again, whenever phase one, and if we need somebody to reach out to you and go over what those distribution options are. But let's say they meet those distribution options. When can they start getting a monthly payment from their annuity?
Yeah, actually, immediately, if that's what you need, no matter what age you are. I had mentioned earlier, 59 and a half, pre-penalty. The IRS has a special rule called 72T, SEPP, SEP, Substantial Equal Periodic Payments, and I'll explain that to you. So what it allows you to do, if you want to start receiving income early before you're 59 and a half, there's the workaround with this 72T. You have to pick a certain dollar amount, which we can help you calculate. That's great. But once you turn on that income, there's two things. You either have to turn age 60 or 5 years time has to have elapsed before you can even affect it or change it. So this is a very permanent decision that we had a gentleman who we spelled this out for him. He was doing the 72T, and then he reached in unbeknownst to us and grabbed money for a car. When that happened, it's like a house of cards. This was like 3 years after the 72T was in place. The IRS said, wait a minute, not only are we going to now penalize you for this distribution, we're going to go back to every other distribution you made. We're going to not only penalize you 10%, but we're going to charge you interest and penalties on that because you didn't pay it in the beginning. It's hell. So yes, you can, but we can work around, we can segregate IRAs. Sometimes you say, listen, I've got $400,000 from the carpenters. I need $1,200 a month. Okay, we're going to move $200,000 into the 72T IRA, and then we'll leave this other alone just in case we need to tinker with it. So there are workarounds. We know all the rules. We're very well trained on that. We wouldn't trip you up. But immediately is the answer, but we have to make sure we do what the IRS allows.
Correct. Great. So I'll go to Tom. Next question. Daniel would like to know, is there any specific amount of money you should have at retirement? And I think this kind of goes back into the all-encompassing that everybody's different. Everybody's plan is going to be different. So I don't know if there's a specific answer to that.
Well, I think this all goes back to Paul's explanation about the planning at the beginning, is having a very good idea of your expenditures. And that really is the key as to how much money you might need to cover that, so you don't lose your style of living, if you will. And it's probably all determined, it comes from the plan.
Right.
And the plan will identify what you need to do for so that your money outlives you.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. Go ahead,
Just
Paul, you
expand
wanna
on
add
that
to
too. So there are rules of thumb, which
Yeah.
I'm going to break my rule, right? Right. So usually we say if you're 60 or younger, you probably wouldn't want to take out more than 3% of your portfolio if you have a desire to have it last for the rest of your life, right? So whatever amount you have, multiply it by 3%. That would probably be a comfortable amount you can distribute. So for every 100,000, maybe 3,000 a year. Doesn't sound like much, but again, you don't want to eat through this too quickly. And then once you get in your 60s, you could do what's called the 4% rule. Why you don't want to take out more than that? Because inflation, as Tom talked about, it's penalizing. So you want to have your money, you want to retain a lot of the growth of the portfolio and distribute enough. Because if you want $3,000 a year now, or whatever the distribution is, in 10 years you're going to need 3,000 or 5,000. Well, you better have a bigger pile of money to do that. So you grow by 6, send out 3, keep 3, so the portfolio will grow despite the distributions.
Yeah, great answer. Again, good questions. Everyone's still coming in. I'll go to Tom. We'll start with you on this one. So from Ken, he just wants to know, could you please explain or give an explanation on if a Roth option is something that should be considered, and is there a benefit to that choice?
There's definitely a benefit. And again, the difference between a normal traditional IRA and a Roth IRA is taxation. Money in a traditional is pre-tax, so as you take money out, it becomes taxable income to you. Roth, once it's in, it's post-tax, everything comes out. Appreciation and distributions are free. This is all a tax issue, and it really all depends on, again, your situation. I'm somewhat in the middle on this personally, because you're playing a tax game. And I think at the end, it all comes out in the wash personally. But if you think about it from a standpoint of legacy, and you have money to leave children, etc., Roths are the best way to go, because once those beneficiaries receive your funds, it will come out and it will be tax-free and come out tax-free as well.
Great. So we're getting close. We've got a couple more questions before we get to the lightning round. When does it make, this is a Social Security question, and when does it make sense to delay Social Security? I'll start with Paul.
Okay. Again, so we're going to keep saying this over and over again. You do your financial plan, you look at your cash flow analysis, and you determine, when you're going to need funds and when will Social Security kick in. Everyone can collect Social Security at 62. Most people born, well, everyone born from 1960 or later, we'll assume that's our audience. Your full retirement age is 67. So deferring, so if you're eligible at 62 and you have competing income, you can only make up to $24,000 a year, roughly. It might be $24,320 a year. So if you're between 62 and 67 and you're not working, we'd have to run those numbers to see if it's advantageous to defer or not. But if you are working, you definitely want to defer, because you're just giving money back to Social Security that you shouldn't. So we can work on that. But then deferring from 67 to 70, you might as well, you never want to wait past 70, because the 8% annual step up stops. You really have to run those numbers. I'll give you one example of a reason you would defer, and I talked about this earlier with them, is I had a client who was 70 years old, still working. He had a very good income. His wife was 12 years younger than he was, and she really didn't work very much. She had a very low earnings record. Because the Social Security benefit was so high, if he waited till 70, it would have maxed out. But he realized he would probably predecease his wife. So if that's the case, and when if you're married and you pass away, either spouse can choose either their own benefit, they can stay on it, or they can hop to the spouse's benefit. They choose only one. He did that because he said, listen, she doesn't have much of one to begin with. I want to max out mine. So that would be a reason to defer. So there's a lot of little wrinkles. And again, the plan spells all this out. I mean, we all have these Social Security optimizers in the plan. So if you want to add to that.
Well, the only thing I would say, if you can afford to do it, right? It's all about affordability, having the time. The government is going to guarantee you an 8% COLA on that deferral for those years until you hit 70. Paul mentioned this earlier, getting a 3.5% return in CDs and bonds today is maybe exactly what you can get. You can't get 8, and it's government guaranteed. So, and they're not doing this because they want you to spend money. They don't want to pay you. And that's what it boils down to. But so they're willing to gin it up a bit. So in case you can't afford to wait.
Yeah. And it's great answers from the both of you. And it's a great question because it is more information. So even again, in these 2 quick answers, there's a lot of detail and information in there, which is again, more reiteration of the point that that's why you would reach out to financial advisors, financial planning, because they can help navigate these choices and help you determine what's the best age, if you need to delay or not. So here's one. This is probably our last question. As you've built, so remember, they've done everything we just talked about, right? We're looking into the future. They get a little older. They've built this nest egg. They have a lot of savings built up that they want to pass on to their children. And they want to protect those assets as they get older. So maybe some estate planning. Is long-term care insurance something that people should consider? Again, this is further down the road as they get older, but it can become very expensive if you're not looking towards the future and what it might cost if you get older, you have to live by yourself, maybe you have to go into a home. That insurance will protect those assets in that estate that you've helped build up throughout your retirement. Do you deal with that?
Sure, absolutely. That's a big part of our plan. So these financial planning softwares have a lot of facets. There's a tax section, there's an estate planning section, and there's a long-term care section. We always cover that. We tend to find that when we're dealing with a lot of early retirees from the carpenters, it's not a big topic of conversation because you're young, and sometimes funding these things early, it's costly. But you definitely want to map that out. There's over a 50% chance that if you're a married couple, that one of you will need care, and it is expensive. So there are tools in our shed, either through underwriting and getting annual premium payments. There are more nuanced investments now that it takes some of your IRA, that you rolled over. We can front load that into a bucket that sits there, and if you need it, you can get 3 times what you put in, sometimes 4. But if you don't need it, then the money's not lost, which is very attractive. The money will go to your estate. But if you need to grab it, you will take a 30% haircut. But that's a lot cheaper than paying those premiums all those years. It's a very, very important part of the plan. You really want to look at it. I would say, we tend to usually mid to late 60s, we really start having the conversation more heavily.
Okay. This is one area where these are both complicated and complex. Mm-hmm. And you really do need the help of someone who understands these policies before you make a decision. That's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just another thing to think about that could be part of to help keep those assets and keep that nest egg you build up to pass along to your beneficiaries, children, and so forth. So I think we answered the majority of questions that came in. If we didn't get to it, again, we will be going through the questions. We'll reach out to you. Somebody from the fund office, fund staff will reach out to you. We will post this video on YouTube. And if you ever wanted to, we'll send a follow-up email with the contact information for both Paul and Tom. But we're going to get into now is the lightning round. So quick questions, simple answer, yes or no. We'll run down the list. Paying off the house before retirement, yes or no?
No.
Paul?
No.
Oh, all right. They're in agreement. Biggest retirement flex. So maybe the top goal you're looking to achieve. No debt, a big annuity, or guaranteed income. Paul?
No debt.
No debt.
No debt. Oh, 2 for 2. All right. Last one. One thing that every member should do in the next 90 days to improve their retirement outlook. Paul?
Seek out a planner.
Find a financial advisor.
Look at that. 3 for 3 in the lightning round. 100%. Again, thank you both for joining us tonight. I'm glad that you give a lot of insight, a lot of good information that can help at least generate that conversation or start the process and the thinking process. Because tonight, it wasn't about predicting the market. It's not about chasing returns. It's not about selling anything. We get sold stuff all the time. Every time you turn on your TV, you open the phone, social media, they're selling you something. We're not selling anything. It's just about controlling what you can control. I'm sure every member has spent their career building things that stand the test of time. You've worked in the heat, you've worked in the cold, the rain, the early mornings, and you did it with skill and discipline. Retirement deserves that same level of planning. The difference now is instead of building with wood and other materials, you're building with time, income, and decisions. So the goal isn't just to retire, it's to retire with confidence. To know your income is solid, to know your family is protected, and to know you're not guessing. If tonight did one thing, I hope it made you at least think. Maybe it raised a question. Maybe it confirmed you're on track. Or maybe it nudged you to tighten up your plan just a little bit. Here's the truth. Hope is not a retirement strategy. A plan is. So take what you heard tonight, ask questions, review your numbers, talk to a professional, and most importantly, treat your retirement plan with the same seriousness you treated every job you've ever walked onto. Because the next chapter you're building is your own. Thank you and good night.